The Connection Show. Inspiring hope. Health. Healing. Sponsored by Brave Heart Workshops. Live with Jill Reynolds. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like our page. Share it. Subscribe to it now and click the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming shows.
The Connection Show, inspiring hope, health, and healing, sponsored by Braveheart Workshops Live with Jill Reynolds. And joining me today is Angila Curvey-Chukwu. Welcome, Angela, to the show.
Hello.
Well, we are grateful that you could join us today and empower communities one person at a time. And Angela, what we love on the Connection Show is we love to connect the dots of story, the good times in life, the hardships, some painful memories, and bring that into the light so that the audience hopefully can have transformation from your story to their story. So would you mind taking us on a journey back into the life of Angela as a little girl and bring us currently to how your life has transformed into who you are today?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. First, I want to say thank you so much for having me here. I absolutely love what it is that you're doing, by spreading hope and health and healing. I think that's so very important. We definitely need it in today's climate. So Angela, who is she? So, as a little girl, she grew up single family home. I did not get to, I didn't meet my father, my biological father, until I was going into the second grade. And then when he came and he promised to come back the next day, he never showed up until I was going into high school. And that's when I saw him again. So for so many years, I dealt with abandonment issues, right? With daddy issues. And then, I went through school. And then when I got to high school, that's really where the struggle began. I was trying to figure out who I was. I didn't feel like I was good enough. And then I started running away from home. And so, I was just like, I always felt I was looking for something else. I was looking for more. I don't know what it was, but I was just looking for more. So I used to run away a lot. And then, in my running away, I started I started drinking, I started smoking weed. Then it progressed. I started smoking PCP, and then I found myself, I lost a few years while I was addicted to crack cocaine. While I was out there on my journey, I was, I would what they call boosting. So I would steal clothes and other items to sell them in exchange for money and or crack. And so that lasted for probably about like 2 or 3 years. And then it went to the flip side. And so then I found myself, at this point, I'm 15 years old. And I'm still, estranged from my family. And just out there, just doing my own thing, trying to find who I was. And I just kept down spiraling. Got into some trouble. I ended up in a juvenile detention center. I was there for maybe like a few months. But I was, like I said, I found myself just down spiraling. And then it was, I did stop using drugs, praise God. But then I found myself just, dating older men, just partying and just not really focusing on who it was that God had called me to be. Because I from a young age, I knew the Lord. Like my mom, she took me to church. I was baptized. I come from a family that has a lot of pastors. And so I knew God, right? I was introduced to him at a very young age, but I kept running. I kept running. I'm a dreamer. So, I would run from these things and I would hear things. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. But then, later on, then I found myself as to where I was no longer using drugs. Then I was on the other side of it. And then I started doing some other things, which landed me in prison in another country. I was in prison in Jamaica for 10 months, right?
And what was that for? What was those?
So that was for I got caught trying to bring drugs back home to America.
So instead of using, you started dealing.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. And so usually it's the flip side, but I do things backwards all the time. But so, I did my time there, came back and was trying to, get adjusted to being back home. And I was like, I definitely am not doing that anymore because I do not want to go back to jail or to prison or any of things like that. But I still was, a little lost. I finally was able to make amends with my family. At this time, I was living with my grandparents because my mom was young when she had me. She was 18. She really did the very best that she could. She's a great mother. But she had her own struggles too. But then when I came back from Jamaica, I was living with my grandparents until I was able to, find a job and try to, get stable until I was able to get my own place.
So did you start going to AA meetings and things like that, or?
I did not.
No.
I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done the AA route or any of that. It was like one day I woke up and I was like, this is not who I am. And I always felt out of place, right? Whenever I was in that environment, or if I would, if I was getting high, I always felt out of place. And I knew this is not where I was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And even like when I was out at the clubs and partying and doing those things, even in a crowd, I always felt alone and I felt out of place. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but I didn't want to listen to the call of God. And so I just kept running. Mm-hmm. And so then when I came home, I did finally, I met the person who was my first husband. But it was the baby before the ring. So we ended up having a baby. And we had our ins and outs. And I still wasn't on the straight and narrow. Right. I wasn't using or dealing or anything like that, but he was. So I was still in that lifestyle. And I tell everybody, I did not grow up until I was pregnant with my second child. Because when I found out that I was pregnant with my second child, the nurse was so nervous because she was like, are you okay? Because I just started crying. Because I was like, what am I going to do now? Like, I have to be a grown up. So, she wouldn't let me leave for a while until she could calm me down. And I was just like, I don't know what to do with myself. I didn't see my life here like this. Right. And so then my husband, he was deported 2 months before my son was born. So here I am where I'm thinking, okay, finally, I have a husband, I have these children, we're going to live okay. Because at this time, we're like, before everything had happened, because he got caught up. Like I said, he was dealing drugs and he was incarcerated. And before that, we were looking for a house. We were like, and he was trying to get out of the life. He was like, I want to do things right. But
and where was he from? Jamaica?
He's from Jamaica, yes.
So because he got arrested, he got deported.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, then I'm here and I'm like, I was trying to break the cycle because I didn't want my children to not have their father in their life because I knew what it did to me. And so I was like, I don't want that. But things didn't work out that way. Right. Mm-hmm. And so he was deported. And we weren't able to go down to visit until I think my son was maybe about, because she's 3, so maybe about 7. So for 7 years, they had never met face to face. We did try to do the phone calls, and at this time, it wasn't any FaceTime or WhatsApp. So there was no face to face.
And were you still married to him, or did you divorce him during this time, or did you stay married?
So I stayed married for some time because when he was deported, they did say that after a certain period of time that we could go and file for him to come here, back to America. But we, like I said, in the very beginning, things were like, okay, we were calling and talking to each other. And then we started growing apart. I didn't want to live that life anymore. The phone calls just started falling off. There was no communication. And I was like, hey, I don't want to put my life on hold if this is not something that you see doing later on. Because now, I'm like, I want to move on if we're not going to grow together. So eventually, yes, we did end up getting divorced.
Mm-hmm. No, was that then before your daughter turned 7? Because you said she saw him at 7.
My son.
Okay,
my son. So that was, yes, it was before he turned 7.
You got divorced, but you still brought him there even though you were divorced.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was still hopeful. And I was, because I was like, even if him and I are not together, I still want them to have a relationship with their father. Because, like I said, because I know how it felt to me, and I never wanted to be in the way of that. But because of the distance, and just life, their relationship, it never really blossomed, and that's something that I still am, pushing for my children to say, hey, I know that you're grown. They're like, my oldest daughter now, she's 30. She's 29 or 30, I forget. But and then, my son, he's 24. Wait, if she's 30, then he's 24, 25. But
and they don't want to see him.
No, they don't.
Where is he now? Is he still in Jamaica?
He's still in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so then after the divorce, then, where did your life turn to then?
So after the divorce, then I started. Then I met somebody else, and we ended up having a baby. And so we were together for a while, but then the relationship began to get abusive, right? And then it had gotten to the point as to where the last straw was the day that him and we were in there and we were fighting. And my oldest daughter, and I will never forget the look on my children's faces. My oldest daughter took her brother and her sister, and they were all sitting in the chair together. And then I came out of the room because I had walked out of the room, and she was like, here, mommy, use this. And it was a knife. And I said, I'm done. I don't want my children to grow up in this type of environment. And I couldn't do it anymore. So I made the decision and I said, this is done. It's over. And I left. And then, but of course I was like, now here I am. I have to start all over again. Once again, I'm a single mother, right? But even though him and we couldn't work things out, he was always very good to the children. And he was a very, very good father to his daughter. But he did treat my oldest two as they were his, right? So I never, didn't allow him to see the children or for them to go and visit or anything like that. But him and we couldn't do it, right? And then that is when I remember I was standing in the kitchen and I was just like, what are you doing? You need to find yourself back in church, building your relationship with Christ, because where you're going is nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And because at that point I was partying, I was, drinking. I never went back to using drugs. But my life was not going anywhere. And I was just like, I'm empty. But then I woke up one morning, like I said, and I was just like, I have to go to church. So I did go to a few. I went to our family church, that where my grandparents and my mom and my aunt, they all go. And it was great. The pastor, he was great, but I needed more.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my girlfriends, she invited me to come to her church. And when I got there, I was like, this is what I need. And it was at that time that I said, okay, I have to let everything else go. And I fully surrendered my life to Christ.
And how old were you then?
At that time, I was like 30. I must have been like 35.
Okay.
Yeah, probably about 35. And like I said, all these, even though I was out in, I was getting high, I was partying, I was doing those things, I knew who God was. And I know that it was only because of his grace and his mercy that I'm able to sit here today. Because I was in some really, really dark places and some very dangerous places that I know that it was the hand of God that said, no, not yet. She's not finished yet. Mm-hmm. And so that's what has allowed me to bring me here today.
That's awesome. So then after you came back to the Lord and surrendered your life, what took place next in your life?
Well, of course, you surrender your life to Christ and you're saying, oh, yes, this is it. But then when you let up on the gas a little bit, you leave room for the enemy to come. You still have the ups and downs. And even though at that time when I went to that particular church, it was what I needed at that moment. And then there was some church hurt that happened. Right. And it kind of makes me cringe a little when people say church hurt, but there were so many things that were going on in that ministry that I was like, it's time for me to go. Right. I got what I needed. It's time for me to move on. But in the meantime, between there, I was even though I knew that that I had to continue building my relationship with God, I was very leery. And so, I would go and I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right. And so I had, then I found myself, because that was a smaller ministry. So then I went and I found myself in a larger ministry where I was able to hide a little bit. Mm-hmm. But even in that hiding, God was like, no, you're a worker bee. So you're here. Yes, you learn for now, but now it's time for you to do something. So I did. I love that ministry. I started working with the youth and young adults in that ministry. And I was a greeter. So I was like, I need to do something. I needed more. And so I was there for a couple of years. And then it was like, okay, now it's time to move on to something else, right? I got what I needed there. And at this time, I was, again, I woke up one morning and I said, come on, y'all, let's go to church. And I got the kids ready. At this time, my now husband, but my then boyfriend, I was like, yep, come on, we're all going. And so they were like, what are you talking about? I said, we got to go to church today. One of my best friend, who's also my co-host on one of the podcasts that I do, she had been inviting me to come to her church. And I was like, okay, I had visited a few times, but that morning it was like, get up and go. And that's where I've been ever since. And it was the best choice that I've ever made.
And when did that take place, Angela? What year was that about approximately?
So that was probably, we got married in 2014. So maybe about 2012.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
about 2012. Mm-hmm.
So you have
Yeah.
3 children of your own,
Yes.
and then now a husband.
Yes.
And does he have children as well?
He does not. He
So,
does not.
so the
Yeah.
3 kids are kind of his now too.
They're definitely his, because it's so funny. Because we have to go through to get to the other side, because when we first married, and because my children had seen me go through so much, they saw me in abusive relationships, they saw things going on, and so they were very protective, and they were like, I'm not going to fool around, I'm not getting close to anybody, I don't like anybody. She's a bad picker, and I was. I will admit I was a bad picker. But
well, I want to pause on that comment, because
yeah.
I don't necessarily know if you were a bad picker,
Right.
as much as it sounds to me
Mhm.
like you fell prey when you got off of the cocaine.
Yes.
You fell prey into codependency and into love addictions.
That you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to fill that void.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
so that's not necessarily picking bad as much as it is the generational woundedness of not having love from her father.
Yes.
And then we fall prey into where people, places, or things become more important than ourselves, that we lose our own identity.
Amen. Indeed. And that's actually something that I talk about in my book. Mm-hmm. Is that trying to fill the void with the people, places, and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So when the kids started to see a change in you and started to see a change in your husband,
yes.
of that they could gradually get to a place of trust.
Yes.
That's when the relationships kind of shifted for the kids.
Yes, indeed. And so now they'll call him before they call me. Like, if they need some help, or they need some advice or something like that, like they're constantly talking, and he's like, oh yeah, he said it this morning. He's like, yeah, it's about time for us to go out on another family date, because they're all adults. Mm-hmm. And we have 2 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So we're grandparents, and so every once in a while we try to do it at least at the minimum once a month.
I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yes.
And I don't mean to, and that's nothing of it's shame, because it's called 4 generations of sin. So the grandkids, are they from a 2-parent family home or a single-parent family home?
It's from a single family home.
So the generational wounds follow through with the kids.
Do.
Yeah. And those can be broken. They sound like they can't, but there is some work that I've done, transformational coaching, on bringing generational sin back 4 generations, so that blessings can come in to your great grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, yourself, and then your children and your children's children, so that curse of single parenting and fornication and adultery and on and on can be broken.
Yes. Yeah. And it was something that I did stress to my children, that I was there. Now, of course, you can't tell them everything, but I tried to be as open with them as they begin to get older, so that they can understand. And I'm like, I want you to learn from my mistakes. Mm-hmm. So I didn't hide like my previous life from them. And I did explain to them, I'm like, listen, you have to stay away from alcohol. Alcoholism is something that runs heavy in our family, and you have to be very mindful of that. Drug addiction, that's something that, I went through, and I don't want you all to go through it. I don't want you to raise kids by yourself, because it hurt me, and you see how it hurt you. And they were this close. They were very close.
Yeah. But at that point, you just turn them over to God. They have to go through their own journey and pain and suffering and struggles. So
Yeah.
bring us to today now. So what is, and I'll probably say it wrong, I believe you're the founder of
Yes.
is it A Michelle? Is it pronounced
Yeah.
Michelle?
That's it. It's
And
pronounced Michelle.
and so what is A Michelle?
So A Michelle is a nonprofit organization that is here to empower communities one person at a time. So we have a lot of different layers within the organization. We have a young ladies group, that mentoring group that we work with young ladies from middle school all the way through high school. Because, of COVID, we haven't met anytime. It's time to get things going again, though. But once a month we would meet. We would talk about different life skills. We would do different activities, because I find that sometimes when you have, instead of just sitting there and talking, you're doing activities, but you're kind of, talking in between there. They'll start to open up a little more.
Yeah.
And then we have a program that is for parents, and it's to bridge the gap. Because, as you know, teenagers and parents, they don't speak the same language. And so it's just there as a mediator, and just to kind of say, okay, well, this is what the kids have been saying. So, translating it for the parents, and also it's a group for people to know you're not the only one. Yeah. Because I can speak for myself that I was embarrassed to ask for help. Because I was like, if I ask for help, then they're going to think that I'm a bad parent. But it's not. And that
one thing I learned, Angela, what I'm going to say, I don't know if you'll agree with it, but I 100% agree with it. So we could be on completely different pages, because I've said this to some moms and they look at me like I'm totally crazy. But when my son got in trouble at 17 and he had to go to a peer group therapy with, and the parents would have to come. They taught us, and some people I've shared this with said, "Oh my gosh, I would never do that." They taught us in the group, and these again were parents of kids that were troubled teens that had gotten in trouble with the law or gotten in trouble with whatever, and they taught us that you should never trust your children. They said, parents grow up thinking, I'm going to trust my kids. And they said, you know what? If your kids have gotten in trouble, don't ever trust them. So you need to be 2 steps ahead. So what they taught us is that we had the right to go through their backpacks, read their journals, everything, to be 2 steps ahead. And, parents, I think, go through this period that they think, oh, I trust my child. They're such a good kid. Or, oh, I would never read their journal or go through their things. That's invading their privacy, and on and on and on. And I'm like, no. And then they actually taught us that the only responsibility as parents that we had to provide for our kids were a roof over their head, a place to sleep, and it didn't even have to be a bed. It could be the floor. One pair of pants, one pair of underwear, one shirt, and one coat, and one socks, and one of each. We did not have to give them 7 days a week of clothes. One thing, and at least 1 or 2 meals a day. That's what you had to give them. And so at that point, they said anything we made a decision to give past that would be our choice. And then they even taught us, don't even give them a key to the house, that they're told after school they're to go to the library and wait till you get home. Because these were kids that were stealing from their parents to use drugs. And they said they don't have a right to have a key to your house. They do not have a right to have a TV or Nintendo or Game Boy, none of that, or cell phones. That's all privileges. And so if they follow the rules, then they can have this amount. But if they don't, and there were times, my son loved clothes. He loved clothes. And there were times I would just have to pack the suitcase, and I guess you're going to wear the same thing to school every day this week, because you don't get your clothes. And when he got mad one time and broke down his bedroom door, I put, like the hippie beads on the door, and
Right.
and he never got a door again. Never
Right.
again. You don't have a door to your bedroom. If you need privacy, I guess you'll have to go in the bathroom. But
Right.
you never have a closed door anymore. You broke it
Right.
and you don't get another one. But parents don't know how to do tough love.
No.
They just don't know
No.
how to do tough love. They think that they have to be friends with their kids, and there's no such thing as being friends with your children.
No, now that I do agree with, and I think that we need to set clear boundaries, because if we don't know what the boundaries are, if we may be thinking it, but if we're not setting this clear with the children, they're going to cross every time. So, I do agree with that to a certain extent, as far as because now I do feel like if you've broken my trust, it's going to take a while for me to be able to do that. And yes, all that stuff is privilege, and we have to be tough, because if we're not tough on them now, the world is not going to be easy on them later.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and the other thing I learned too, Angela, was, and this was a real awakening for me. I mean, huge, was my therapist at the time I was seeing when my son was growing up. She drew on a whiteboard. She put a P and a C on the board and an A and an A. And she said, from the time your children are born until they're 18, you must be in a parent-child relationship with them.
yes.
But the moment they turn 18, you must switch it to an adult relationship, and no longer treat them as though they're kids. They,
Right.
They are your child, but
Mhm.
they're not a kid, and
Right.
they're an adult child. They're an adult kid, and so you need to go into that position of switching it, because what will happen if you don't, you'll continuously coddle them, and they will never grow up and have the strength to be on their own 2 feet. And
Yeah.
and I remember, I mean, it was a hard thing for me to do, but I
Me
mean,
too.
when my son got out of college, he called and said, hey mom, I'm graduating, can I come home? And it was so hard to say this, but
Right.
I did it, and I'm so grateful. I said, well,
Right.
first off, honey, I said, this isn't your home anymore. When you
Right.
left for college at 18, you left home.
Right.
So if you're asking, now that you've graduated, if you can come and stay in my home,
Right.
I'll allow you to stay for 90 days. He goes, 90 days? I said, yep, that's enough time for you to be on your feet. And I said, and I'll set up boundaries with you to help you to accomplish that, and how to set up a budget so you know how to pay your bills, and
Right.
to make sure you have a job that's going to pay you enough money to pay your bills and be self-sufficient.
Right.
And I did it, and I'm telling you, Angela, I wish I could teach this to every mother out there, because kids that, and I'm not being mean, but kids that come home after college, the parents are doing them no justice, because especially men, they
Right.
have to grow up to be men. When we have men that are being treated like little boys, they have absolutely no idea how to be self-sufficient.
Right. Right. I know it was hard for me to adjust from to the adult relationship. And it was especially my youngest daughter that we used to get into it a lot. And it was because I found myself giving my opinion when they just wanted to share. Right? They weren't asking for advice, but I was here and I was like, well, I'm the mother, I have to fix it. No, they're adults. So they have to fix it. Right now, that you are their safe place, because that's one thing I am grateful for, is that my children have always been, open enough, or comfortable enough, should I say, to come and discuss certain things with me. Not everything, but a lot of things they were able to come and discuss with me. I always let them know I'm your safe place. So sometimes I would have to hold it inside. I'd be screaming because I'm like, I don't know that I want to hear this, but but I'm glad that you feel good enough to come. But it was after I had to learn that, why is it that we're always getting into things? So now what I do is that, if they come to me and they are, sharing some things to me, and then it kind of gets quiet, then I'm like, okay, well, are you asking for my advice? Are you asking for, or were you just wanting me to listen? Because now I have to set the boundaries for myself.
Well, and even ask them, what is it that you need from me? Just a listening ear, or would you like feedback? Do you need feedback? Do you need some, and that. I think one of the hardest things for me to transition, I was to a single, never married mom for 17 years. And one of the hardest things for me to transition when my son went off to school is the boundary of him telling me how often he wanted me to call him. And that was a hard one, because I wanted to talk to him every day. And he goes, Mom, stop. And then it was like, oh, okay. So, it'd be like, I go, how often can I call you? He goes, once a month. I go, once a month? I go, I'm going to go. I go, how about once a week? And he goes, oh, Mom. Okay. He goes, can you try every other week? He goes, I'm so busy with school and my friends, and I just don't have time to keep talking to you. And I'm telling you, Angela, I felt like I was going to jump off a cliff because I was so used to being attached to him. But I think what really helped, I mean, I did okay freshman and sophomore year, but what was my saving grace is when he went overseas to Italy to study abroad, and I couldn't talk to him for 6 months.
What? 6 months?
I could email, but I couldn't talk to him. And so that helped me to set myself up to have boundaries when he did go off and get married. Now I'll just kind of wait and, sometimes I'll text and say, hey, is there any chance I can FaceTime my grandkids? And he'll say, oh, Mom, give me about 20 minutes or something. And then he'll put me on with the grandkids, and I'll say to the grandkids, can I say hi to my son? Can I say hi to Daddy? And they go, Daddy, Grandma wants to say hi to you. So it's like, oh, can I say hi to you once in a while? But boys are so different than girls. Totally different.
They definitely are. Yes.
Girls want to talk to their moms. Boys, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Too busy.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your hope, health, and healing with us, and the blessings. Let me just pause now and show everyone your bio, and it's got your page there as well, how to reach out to you. And then we're going to pause for just a moment, Angela, and have a commercial from this amazing company called Holy Hydrogen. It's a hydrogen machine that brings total health to your whole entire body. It's amazing. So let's pause for that, and then we'll come right back.
All right.
Hydrogen is used by health professionals as a powerful antioxidant and the #1 tool to fight inflammation. Studies show therapeutic potential in cancer, diabetes, digestive, and heart issues, and essentially every organ and system in the body. This is not medical advice, because I'm not your doctor, but if you have any health concerns, I strongly recommend that you learn more about hydrogen. Get educated at holyhydrogen.com and order the best hydrogen generator known to man. Use code BRAVEHEART for $100 off your order. Because hydrogen is the smallest molecule in existence, it can pass through the cell membrane and even the blood-brain barrier to clear out inflammation and free radical damage where other antioxidants just can't get to. Visit holyhydrogen.com to see the latest technology that elevates your immune system and fights inflammation. Search their research library to see if hydrogen has a track record for helping a health concern you're dealing with. Make sure to use code BRAVEHEART for $100 off your order. Remember, holyhydrogen.com.
Well, thanks again for listening to Holy Hydrogen, and reach out to them for that amazing machine that will bring total health to your body and relieve you of pain and bring your cells back to the hydrogen level that they need. And so in closing, Angela, could you close us off with a little bit about your book and your speaking and what is being a creator. You said you're a creator. So share a little bit of that with the ending.
Okay. So my book, it is called Through the Tears. It's a journey from pain to purpose. And it talks about my journey of abuse, addiction, and listen, I can't even remember, but abuse and addiction. And so how I was able to overcome that, right? I know it was nothing of myself, but it was all by the glory of the Lord. And so it talks about, like I said, it talks about my journey through that. And it also gives some tips on, how do I continue to do that? And it is with that relationship with Christ that is able to help me. Also, being a creator, that is because sometimes I have a journal. You can't see it on the little thing, but I create journals and planners and things like that. And so the journal, it is a devotional, inspirational journal. So it gives you some nice quotes in there. There's some scriptures in there. There are some things in there that some stories, like I said, some devotionals, and some places in there for you to write down your hopes, your dreams, and what it is that you want to do.
Well, thanks so much. And you have created an amazing platform to hear people be inspired and transformed. So if anything that Angela shared with you today, look at the similarities of her stories instead of the differences in your own life, so that you too can receive hope, health, and healing. So thanks so much, Angela, for jumping on today and being with us.
Definitely. Again, thank you for the invitation. It was so great to be here and have our conversation.
Thanks again. God bless you, Angela.
All righty.
Thanks for joining us today on The Connection Show, where we bring you stories that will transform your life. The Connection Show would appreciate your support. Please go to either our Patreon page or our PayPal Me Now link today. We love our podcast show guests and appreciate our listeners and YouTube subscribers. Please go to our YouTube channel called The Connection Show and Braveheart Workshops and subscribe now. Remember to click the gray bell in the All tab so you don't miss any upcoming episodes.